Cadet Kevin Hayes gripped the edge of the command chair, his knuckles white. Red emergency lights bathed the bridge of the USS Intrepid in an eerie glow. Alarms blared in the background as smoke drifted through the air. The training vessel was never meant to see actual combat. Now, most of its systems were failing and most of its crew was dead. "Status report," Kevin said, his voice steadier than he felt. At 22, he was now the highest-ranking officer left alive on the ship. Olivia Russell wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of grease across her face. Main engines at 30%, weapon systems damaged. Life support stable? But shields are barely functioning. Kevin nodded, taking in the information. 6 hours ago, he had been just another cadet on a routine training mission. Now, after a surprise attack by the Zerans, he was in command of a skeleton crew of 5 people. Communications? Kevin asked, turning to George White. George, barely older than Kevin, shook his head. Still receiving, but our ability to transmit is limited to short range only. The view screen flickered to life, showing a reptilian face with yellow eyes and blue-gray scales. Admiral Zach of the Zaran fleet stared at them with cold calculation. "Human vessel," the alien's voice rasped through the speakers. "Your ship is crippled. Your options are gone. Surrender now, and your lives may be spared. Resist, and you will be destroyed." The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in silence except for the constant beeping of damaged systems. "Can they hear us?" Kevin asked. George shook his head. "No, sir. They're broadcasting, but we can't respond on the same channel." Lavra Peters, the ship's medic, spoke up from where she was tending to a wounded crew member. "What are we going to do? We have 17 survivors, and 5 of them are too injured to move." Kevin turned to the tactical display. The Intrepid was drifting near what appeared to be a Zaran forward operating base, a critical installation for their invasion plans. It was pure bad luck that had brought the training vessel into this sector, or perhaps it was something else. "Eric, what do we know about that base?" Kevin asked the security officer. Eric Jones pulled up the information on his screen. "Not much. Intelligence suggests it's a new installation. Probably their staging area for attacks on our colonies in this sector." A different alarm sounded, and George straightened in his seat. "Incoming transmission from military command. They must have boosted the signal to reach us." The screen changed to show a stern-faced admiral. "Cadet Hayes, we're aware of your situation. Our nearest ships are 3 days away at maximum speed. Your orders are to surrender the vessel and comply with all Zaran demands." Kevin's jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect, this is not a discussion, Cadet," the admiral cut him off. "The Intrepid contains no classified technology or information. Your priority is to ensure the survival of your crew. A diplomatic solution is being negotiated. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." The transmission ended abruptly. "They're abandoning us," Eric said, his voice flat. "They're being practical," Kevin replied, though the words tasted bitter. "We're one training ship against a Zaran battle fleet." Olivia moved to stand beside him, lowering her voice. "Kevin, what are we going to do?" Kevin stared at the tactical display, watching as 3 Zaran ships moved to surround the Intrepid. Then his eyes drifted to the base. "Something about its position, its defenses." "We follow orders," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We prepare to surrender." Later. That night, when most of the crew had retreated to rest before the planned surrender at dawn, Kevin sat alone on the bridge. He scrolled through the limited information they had on Zaran protocols, fleet movements, and base security. The door slid open, and Olivia walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Kevin. "You should sleep," she said, sitting in the chair next to him. "So should you," he replied, taking a sip of the bitter liquid. Olivia had been his friend since their first day at the academy. She knew him well enough to see past his calm exterior. "You don't plan to surrender, do you?" she asked quietly. Kevin looked at her, then back at the screen. "Did you know that Zaran bases always follow the same design? It's part of their rigid military thinking. This base is new. It's not fully staffed yet, and look here." He pointed to a section of the schematics. Their power regulation systems have a standard weakness. Olivia leaned closer. Kevin, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that they expect us to be good little cadets and follow orders. I'm thinking that this base is in a perfect position to launch attacks on 3 of our colony worlds. And I'm thinking that surrendering our ship might give us an opportunity no one else will have. You want to take the base? Olivia's eyes widened. That's impossible. There are 5 of us capable of fighting. Against what? Hundreds. Of Zarans? Kevin pulled up another screen, showing the Zaran commander's earlier message. Notice how Admiral Zack spoke? Your lives may be spared. The Zarans don't take prisoners, Olivia. Not really. We surrender. We die, maybe not right away, but eventually. Olivia was quiet for a long moment. So what's your plan? Kevin smiled for the first time since the attack. Something very stupid and very human. I need you to check if we still have access to the emergency equipment locker. Specifically, the compact engineering tools. We're going to fix the ship? Olivia asked, confused. No, Kevin replied, his eyes gleaming with determination in the dim light of the bridge. We're going to break a base. A few hours later, the 5 senior surviving crew members gathered in the medical bay. Kevin explained his observations and his daring plan. This is mutiny, Eric said, though there was no heat in his words. Disobeying. A direct order from command. It's suicide, Lavra added, but she was already packing specialized medical supplies into hidden pockets. George simply nodded. I'm in. Better to die fighting than waiting for execution. Olivia finished Kevin's thought. And if we succeed, If we succeed, Kevin said, looking at each of them, we change the course of this war. The night passed quickly as they prepared. As dawn approached, Kevin stood at the viewport watching the Zaran ships that surrounded them. The enemy base loomed in the distance, its lights glowing against the darkness of space. Military command had ordered him to surrender. But Kevin Hayes had seen another way. In a few hours, either his plan would work or they would all be dead. Somehow, those odds seemed better than the alternative. He turned away from the viewport and walked to the bridge. It was time to signal their surrender to the Zarans. And then, when they least expected it, it would be time to fight back. The 5 crew members gathered in the small conference room adjacent to the medical bay. Maps and diagrams of the Zaran base were displayed on the table's surface. Kevin stood at the head of the table, his face serious but his eyes bright with determination. I know this plan sounds crazy, Kevin said, looking at each person in turn. And I want to be clear, anyone who wants to follow the original orders can do so. No one will think less of you, no one moved. Kevin nodded, grateful for their loyalty. Okay then. Let's go over it one more time. He touched the display, enlarging the image of the Zaran base. The Zarans will expect us to come unarmed and ready. To surrender? They'll take us into their base, probably to this detention area. His finger circled a section near the outer ring of the base. Their arrogance works in our favor, Kevin continued. They don't consider humans a serious threat, especially not cadets on a training vessel. Olivia stepped forward. I've prepared the tools. They look ordinary, but I've modified them. She opened a small case, revealing what appeared to be standard engineering equipment. This diagnostic scanner can actually disrupt their security systems. And this, she held up what looked like a simple wrench, has been weighted to serve as a weapon if needed. Eric nodded appreciatively. Good work. I've analyzed their guard rotations based on our limited intelligence. Zarans are creatures of habit. Their shifts change exactly on the hour with a 5-minute overlap for status reports. George raised his hand. I've studied their communication protocols. Their language is complex, but their codes are surprisingly simple. I think I can imitate enough of their signals to cause confusion. Lavra was the last to speak. I've prepared medical packs that we can hide under our uniforms. Zaran physiology is different from ours. They're cold-blooded and sensitive to temperature changes. If we can access their environmental controls... Kevin smiled. This was why humans had survived as a species: creativity, adaptability, and teamwork. The most important thing to remember is that we'll be outnumbered at least 20-1, Kevin said. We can't win in a direct fight. Our advantage is surprise and the fact that they won't expect a counterattack from the inside. He pulled up another image, this one showing the command center of the base. This is our primary target. If we can take control of their systems, we can lock down sections of the base and possibly even use their own defenses against them. Olivia frowned. The command center will be heavily guarded. Yes, Kevin agreed. That's why we won't go there first. We'll start with the power regulation center. It's usually less guarded, and from there, we can cause disruptions that will draw their attention away from the command center. George looked worried. What about the other crew members? The injured? Kevin's expression softened. That's our biggest challenge. We can't leave them behind, but we can't take them with us either. He pulled up an image of the Intrepid. Before we surrender, we'll move them to the cargo hold and seal it. The Zerans won't expect anyone to be there, and the hold has its own life support system. The meeting continued for another hour as they refined the details of their plan. When they finished, Kevin looked at his team. They were young, inexperienced, and scared, but they were also determined. Get some rest, he told them. Tomorrow we either make history or become a footnote in it. As the others left, Olivia stayed behind. She waited until the door closed before speaking. Kevin, I need to ask, why are you doing this? Really? Kevin looked down at the display, at the image of the Zaran base that had sealed their fate. My brother was on the USS Concord when the Zarans attacked Outpost 7, he said quietly. There were no survivors. The official report said they surrendered first. The Zarans accepted their surrender, then executed everyone anyway. Olivia placed her hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I've never told anyone at the academy. Kevin looked up at her. But I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because I believe we can succeed, and because the intelligence we could gather from that base might save thousands of lives. Olivia nodded. Then we'll succeed. Get some rest, Captain. The title wasn't official, but it felt right. Kevin watched her leave, then turned back to the plans. There were still details to work out, contingencies to plan for. The odds were terrible, but not impossible. Morning came too quickly. Kevin stood on the bridge, wearing his formal uniform for what might be the last time. The rest of the crew was in position. The injured had been moved to the cargo hold, with enough supplies to last several days. Open a channel, Kevin ordered. George activated the communications system. Channel open. Kevin took a deep breath. This is Cadet Kevin Hayes of the USS Intrepid. We are prepared to surrender our vessel as requested. The response was immediate. Admiral Zach's face appeared on the screen, his yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. A wise decision, human. Prepare to be boarded. Any sign of resistance will result in immediate termination of all crew members. The transmission ended. Kevin turned to his team. This is it. Remember, we act compliant until we reach the detention area. Olivia, you'll need at least 10 minutes to access their systems. Eric, you and I will provide cover. George, you'll need to disable their internal communications as quickly as possible. Lavra, be ready to treat any injuries. They nodded, faces grim but determined. One last thing, Kevin said. No matter what happens, what we're doing matters. The Zarans think they know what humans will do when cornered. Let's show them how wrong they are. The deck vibrated slightly as the Zaran shuttle docked with the Intrepid. Kevin straightened his uniform, his hidden tools pressing against his skin beneath the fabric. Here they come, Eric said as the airlock began to cycle. The inner door slid open, revealing 4 Zaran soldiers in full battle armor, their weapons raised. Hands visible, the lead soldier ordered in heavily accented English. Kevin raised his hands slowly, his heart pounding. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back now. We surrender, he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. We'll cooperate fully. As the Zarans surrounded them and began to lead them toward the shuttle, Kevin caught Olivia's eye. She gave him the slightest nod. Operation reversal had begun. The Zaran shuttle detached from the Intrepid with a metallic clunk. Kevin sat with his hands folded in his lap, trying to appear defeated. His 4 crew members were arranged around him, all wearing expressions of resignation. None of the Zaran guards seemed to notice the tension in their muscles or the calculating looks they exchanged. Through the shuttle's viewport, Kevin watched the Intrepid grow smaller. He hoped the injured crew members hidden in the cargo hold would be safe. If the plan failed, they would likely never be found. "Your ship will be examined and then destroyed," the Zaran guard said in halting English. His scales gleamed blue-green under the shuttle's lights. "Admiral Zach wishes to speak with you before you are processed." Kevin nodded meekly. "We understand." The shuttle approached the Zaran base, a massive structure shaped like a flattened disc with protruding sections that resembled spines. As they drew closer, Kevin studied the external defenses, memorizing the placement of weapon emplacements and patrol patterns of small fighter craft. They docked at one of the lower levels. The guards motioned for the humans to exit first, weapons trained on their backs. Kevin led his crew into the Zaran base, his senses on high alert. The interior was surprisingly warm, with humidity that made their clothes stick to their skin. The walls were a dark metallic green, inscribed with Zaran symbols that glowed faintly. "Atmosphere adjusted for our comfort," Lavra whispered, barely moving her lips. "They didn't bother to make it comfortable for us." The guards led them through a series of corridors. Kevin counted the turns 2 left, 1 right, then a long straight section. He spotted security cameras at regular intervals and noted that they passed through 3 security checkpoints, each with 2 armed guards. They were brought to a large circular room filled with various scanning devices. A Zaran in a white uniform approached them. "Remove all items from your pockets," the Zaran ordered. "You will be scanned for weapons." Kevin and his crew complied, emptying their pockets of the few permitted items identification cards, a couple of ration bars, and a small medical kit that Lavra had been allowed to keep. Their hidden tools remained undetected, concealed within specially designed compartments in their uniforms. The Zaran in white ran a handheld scanner over each of them. Kevin held his breath, but the scanner showed nothing unusual. The Zarans. Arrogance was working in their favor. They clearly didn't expect humans to have technology that could fool their scanners. After the inspection, they were escorted deeper into the base. Kevin memorized everything he saw: the location of control panels, the number of guards at each post, the layout of corridors. George was doing the same, his eyes darting around, gathering information about communication systems. Olivia focused on the engineering aspects, studying power conduits and access panels. Eric tracked the guard rotations and security measures, while Lavra observed the few Zarans not in uniform, likely the technical specialists. They were brought to a holding area, a large room with bench-like structures along the walls. There were no other prisoners. "Wait here," the guard ordered. "Admiral Zach will see you soon." The door slid shut with a hiss. Kevin waited for 10 seconds, then nodded to George. George pulled out what looked like a standard communicator, but was actually Olivia's modified device. He attached it to the wall near the door and pressed a sequence of buttons. "We have about 5 minutes before their sensors detect this," George whispered. "It's blocking their audio and video surveillance in this room only." Kevin gathered his team close. "Remember the plan. When they come to take us to the Admiral, we stay together if possible. If they separate us, proceed with your assigned tasks at the first opportunity. Our primary goal is to reach the Power Regulation Center." I counted 12. "Security checkpoints between here and there," Eric said. "Heavy guard presence. I noticed something," Olivia added. "Their environmental control panel in the corridor uses the same interface as their security systems. If I can access one, I might be able to hack into the other." Lavra pulled out a small package from beneath her uniform jacket. "I've got the sedative ready. 1 dose should knock out a Zaran for about 15 minutes. Kevin nodded. "Good. Remember, we need to be in position when their shift change happens." "That's our best window." The minutes ticked by slowly. And George kept his eyes on his modified device, watching for any sign that the Zarans had detected their countermeasures. Finally, the door slid open. A new guard entered, this one with red markings on his armor indicating higher rank. Human leader, the guard addressed Kevin. Admiral Zach will see you now. The others will remain here. Kevin felt a moment of panic. They hadn't planned for this separation so soon. He glanced at his team, seeing the same concern in their eyes. My crew comes with me, Kevin said, trying to sound appropriately submissive while being firm. They were under my command. They should share in whatever judgment the Admiral has for us. The guard hissed, a sound that might have been amusement or annoyance. Humans, always concerned with your group bonds. He seemed to consider for a moment, then nodded. Very well. All of you will come. The Admiral enjoys studying human behavior. Perhaps this will amuse him. Kevin exhaled slowly in relief. The team fell into line behind him as they were led out of the holding area. They walked through more corridors, passing Zaran soldiers and technicians. Kevin noticed that many gave. Then curious looks. Humans were still a relatively new species to the Zarans, and prisoners were probably uncommon in this base. They entered a lift that carried them upward. When the doors opened, they stepped into a much more elaborate section of the base. The walls here were polished to a high shine, and the lighting was brighter. The command level, Eric whispered almost inaudibly. Kevin nodded slightly. This was unexpected. They were being taken directly to the heart of the base, much closer to their ultimate target than they had planned. The guard led them to a large door flanked by 2 heavily armed soldiers. After a brief exchange in the Zaran language, the door slid open. They entered a spacious chamber with a view of space through a large viewport. Admiral Zach stood with his back to them, looking out at the stars and the distant form of the Intrepid. So, the Admiral said without turning, these are the humans who surrendered so wisely. He turned slowly. In person, he was even more imposing than he had appeared on the view screen, taller than the other Zarans, with deeper colors to his scales and eyes that seemed to see right through them. Step forward, leader, Zach ordered. Kevin moved forward, standing straight, no longer pretending to be defeated. If they were going to die, they would die with dignity. You are young, Zach observed, even for a human. Tell me, what is your name? Cadet Kevin Hayes, USS Intrepid. Cadet? Zach's eyes narrowed. A student? They sent children against us? Kevin said nothing, letting the Admiral think what he wanted. Zach circled him slowly. I have studied your species, Cadet Hayes. Humans are unpredictable. It makes you dangerous, but also foolish. He stopped in front of Kevin. What would you have done, I wonder, if you had not been ordered to surrender? Kevin met his gaze steadily. We would have fought until we couldn't. Zach made that hissing sound again. Yes, that is what I expected. He turned away. Take them to the detention block. I will decide their fate later. As they were let out, Kevin caught Olivia's eye. She gave him the slightest nod. Despite the change in their plans, they were still moving forward. The next phase would begin soon. The detention block was a long corridor with cell doors on both sides. The Zaran guards pushed the 5 humans into a single cell, then activated the energy barrier. The transparent blue field hummed with power, sealing them inside. Guard rotation. In 10 minutes, Eric whispered once the Zarans had moved out of earshot. They're running a skeleton crew here, just like we thought. Kevin nodded, impressed by how much Eric had been able to observe. That means we have to move fast. Olivia, how quickly can you disable that barrier? Olivia already had her modified tool in hand, examining the control panel inside their cell. 2 minutes, maybe less. The design is standard. Good. George, did you get a look at their communication setup? George grinned. Better than that. When we passed their central communication hub, I managed to place the disruptor. It's set to activate on my signal. Kevin turned to Lavra. How about the environmental controls? Located them near the lift, Lavra confirmed. Just where the schematics said they would be? I can reach them if we move quickly. Kevin took a deep breath. Despite the unexpected change to their plan, things were falling into place. Okay, we stick with Operation Reversal. Olivia disables the barrier. Eric and I neutralize the guards. George jams communications. Lavra heads for environmental control. We meet at the Power Regulation Center in 15 minutes. They all nodded. There was fear in their eyes, but determination too. One other thing, Kevin added. On the command level, I noticed a large chamber that wasn't on our schematics. It looked like a weapons testing facility. I saw it too, Olivia said. Based on the power readings I detected, they're testing something big. Could be the reason? This base is so important, Kevin frowned. Then we need to gather intelligence on whatever they're building. It could be crucial for Earth's defense. The team fell silent as a guard walked past their cell, performing a routine check. Once he was gone, Olivia moved to the control panel and began her work. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, attaching her modified tool to specific points on the panel. After a minute, she whispered, "Almost there. Get ready." Kevin and Eric positioned themselves on either side of the cell entrance. George stood ready with his communication disruptor. Lavra prepared the sedative injectors she had hidden in her medical kit. "Now," Olivia whispered. The energy barrier flickered and died. In the same moment, George activated his device. Throughout the base, Zaran communication systems began to emit painful bursts of static. Kevin and Eric moved out of the cell first, catching the nearest guard by surprise. Eric delivered a precise strike to the vulnerable spot at the base of the Zaran's neck, where the scales were thinner. The guard collapsed without making a sound. Kevin faced the second guard, who had managed to draw his weapon. Before the Zaran could fire, Kevin threw one of Olivia's modified tools. It struck the guard's hand, causing him to drop the weapon. Kevin closed the distance quickly and subdued the guard with a series of blows learned in academy combat training. "Clear," Eric announced after checking the corridor. The team moved out of the detention area, splitting into two groups as planned. Lavra headed toward the environmental controls, with George accompanying her for protection. Kevin, Olivia, and Eric made their way toward the power regulation center. They encountered minimal resistance, thanks to George's communication disruption. Without the ability to coordinate, the Zaran security forces were disorganized and easily avoided. When they reached a junction, Kevin checked his mental map of the base. Power regulation should be down this corridor, 2 levels down. They moved cautiously, using the shadows for cover. The base's lighting had taken on a reddish tint. Emergency protocols activated by the communication disruption. They were halfway to their destination when a door slid open ahead of them. A tall Zaran emerged, wearing the insignia of a high-ranking officer. His scales were a deeper blue than most, with distinctive markings. "Sub-Commander Vrex," Olivia whispered. Recognizing him from their intelligence briefings, Vrex spotted them immediately. Unlike many Zarans, he reacted with impressive speed, drawing his weapon and firing in one fluid motion. The energy bolt missed Kevin by inches, scorching the wall behind him. Eric pushed Olivia behind a support column while Kevin dived for cover. Vrex fired again, keeping them pinned down. "He's blocking our path to the power center," Kevin said through gritted teeth. "And he'll alert others," Eric added. Kevin looked around desperately, seeking an advantage. He noticed a control panel on the wall near him. "Environmental controls for this section." "Olivia," he called softly, "can you overload that panel from here?" Olivia glanced at it, then nodded. "Cover me." Eric fired several shots from the weapon he had taken from the guard, forcing Vrex to take cover. In that moment, Olivia darted to the panel and attached her device to it. The lights in the corridor flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in dim blue light. Vrex fired blindly in their direction. Kevin used the distraction to circle around, approaching the sub-commander from behind. He struck hard, but Vrex was stronger than he expected. The Zaran spun around, his tail whipping toward Kevin's legs. Kevin jumped, barely avoiding, being swept off his feet. Vrex raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Eric tackled him from the side. The two crashed into a wall, struggling for control of the weapon. Olivia finished her work at the panel. With a sharp hiss, coolant gas began to spray into the corridor from the ventilation system. Vrex gasped, his cold-blooded physiology reacting violently to the sudden temperature drop. His movement slowed, giving Eric the opportunity to wrench the weapon from his hands. Kevin delivered a final blow, and Rex collapsed. "We need to move," Kevin said, breathing hard. "That gas affects humans too, just more slowly." They hurried down the corridor, leaving the unconscious sub-commander behind. When they reached the entrance to the Power Regulation Center, they found it sealed. "Security lockdown," Olivia said, examining the door. "This will take longer to bypass." Kevin checked the time. "We're running behind schedule." George and Lavra should have reached environmental control by now. As if on cue, the lighting throughout the corridor changed from blue to green. "That's Lavra," Olivia said with a smile. "She's accessed the environmental system." The temperature began to rise rapidly, making the humans sweat but creating ideal conditions for them to work. For the cold-blooded Zarons, the sudden heat would cause disorientation and sluggishness. Olivia returned her attention to the door. "Almost got it." Kevin and Eric stood guard, weapons ready. In the distance, they could hear the sound of alarms and confused shouting as the Zarons tried to respond to multiple system failures. The door to the Power Regulation Center slid open. Inside, 2 Zaron technicians looked up in surprise. Before they could react, Eric fired, stunning both of them. "We're in," Kevin said, allowing himself a small smile. "Olivia, get to work on the power systems. Eric, secure the door." As Olivia rushed to the main control console, Kevin activated his communicator. "George, Lavra, status report." George's voice came through, tense but excited. "We've secured environmental control." Laura's locked out the Zarns, but Kevin, we found something. The weapons facility on the command level, it's not just any weapon. It's a planet killer aimed at Earth colonies. Kevin's blood ran cold. What had started as a desperate gamble to avoid surrender had just become much more important. They weren't just fighting for their lives now. They were fighting for Earth. Kevin's mind raced as he processed George's information about the planet killer weapon. The mission had just become far more important than their own survival. "Olivia, how long until you can give us control of the base systems?" Kevin asked. Olivia's fingers flew across the alien control panel. 5 minutes for basic control. Full access might take 15. "We don't have 15 minutes, Eric said from his position by the door. "Security teams are organizing. I can hear them coordinating." Kevin made a quick decision. "Olivia, focus on getting us control of the weapon systems and internal defenses. George, Lavara, we need you at the command center. Meet us there as soon as possible." "On our way," George replied through the communicator. Kevin turned to Eric. "We need to reach Admiral Zach. He'll be in the command center." Eric nodded grimly. "Taking on the Admiral is suicide." "Not taking him on might be worse," Kevin replied. "With that planet killer, they could destroy every Earth colony in this sector." Olivia looked up from her work. "I've got it." "Basic control?" "Established internal security systems are responding." The display in front of her changed, showing a map of the entire base. Red dots indicated Zaron positions, while blue dots showed the humans. "Can you seal off sections?" Kevin asked. "Already on it," Olivia said. "I've locked down all corridors between us and the command center. The Zarons are trapped where they are." Kevin grinned. "Perfect. What about weapons?" "Internal defense systems are online. I can activate stun fields in selected areas." Do it. Clear us a path to the command center." Olivia entered a series of commands. On the display, they watched as groups of red dots stopped moving, indicating Zarons caught in stun fields. "Path is clear," Olivia announced, "but I can't hold it for long. Their best technicians are already trying to break through my lockouts." "Then we move now," Kevin said. "Bring a portable control unit if you can. We might need to make adjustments on the way." Olivia detached a small device from the main console and tucked it into her pocket. Ready, the 3 of them left the Power Regulation Center and moved swiftly through the corridors. True to Olivia's word, they encountered no resistance. The few Zarons they saw were frozen in stun fields, unable to move or speak. They reached a lift that would take them to the command level. As the doors closed, Kevin contacted George and Lavara again. "Status report?" "We're 1 level below you." Lavara replied, "Heading to the command center now." The Zarans are in chaos. Whatever Olivia did to their systems has them completely disorganized. Good, meet us outside the command center. We'll need everyone for this next part. The lift doors opened, revealing the polished corridor of the command level. It was eerily quiet. The humans moved cautiously. Weapons ready? They rounded a corner and saw George and Lavra waiting for them near the massive doors that led to the command center. The Admiral is inside, George said in a low voice, along with at least 6 guards and several officers. Kevin nodded. Olivia, can you get us in? Olivia studied her portable control unit. Yes, but the moment I open those doors, they'll know we're coming. The stun fields won't work in the command center. It's shielded. We need a distraction, Eric said. Lavra reached into her medical kit and pulled out a small container. I modified this sedative to work as a gas. If we can get it into the ventilation system for the command center, it might slow them down. Perfect, Kevin said. Olivia, can you access the ventilation controls? Olivia nodded and began working on her device. After a tense minute, she looked up. Ready, on your signal. Kevin took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine not just their fate, but possibly the fate of Earth's colonies. He looked at his team, these 4 brave cadets who had followed him on this impossible mission. Remember your training, he said quietly. Remember why we're here. No matter what happens next, we've already done more than anyone expected of us. They nodded, determination in their eyes. Now, Olivia, Kevin ordered. Olivia activated the ventilation system. Lavra inserted her container into the access panel. The sedative gas began flowing into the command center. They waited 30 seconds. Then Olivia opened the doors. The scene inside was one of confusion. Several Zarans were slumped over their consoles. Others moved sluggishly, their reactions slowed by the gas. Admiral Zach stood in the center of the room, seemingly less affected than the others, but still visibly disoriented. Now! Kevin shouted. The 5 humans rushed into the command center. Eric and George targeted the guards, firing the stolen Zaran weapons with precision. Olivia and Lavra moved to secure the main control consoles. Kevin headed straight for Admiral. KZAK. The Admiral snarled, drawing his weapon despite the sedative gas. Human trickery, he growled. You will die for this. Kevin dodged the first shot. The second grazed his arm, sending pain shooting through his body. But he kept moving forward, closing the distance. Zach was stronger and more experienced, but the sedative gas had slowed him just enough. Kevin ducked under a wild swing and struck the Admiral hard in the midsection. Zach stumbled back but remained standing. Your species is doomed, Zach hissed. Even if you kill me, the Zaran Empire will crush your colonies. Maybe, Kevin replied, circling the Admiral, but not today. He feinted left, then struck from the right, targeting the sensitive area where Zach's neck met his skull, a weakness in Zaran physiology that few humans knew about. Kevin had studied it at the academy in classes that many cadets had dismissed. As unimportant, the Admiral collapsed, unconscious but alive. Kevin looked around. The command center was secure. His team had subdued the remaining Zarans. Status? He called out. All consoles secured, Olivia reported. I have full control of base systems. Communications are ours, George added. I've blocked all outgoing signals. Lavra was tending to a wound on Eric's leg. Minor injuries only, we're okay. Kevin moved to the main view screen, which showed a detailed map of the sector, including the location of Earth colonies. The planet killer weapon was highlighted, a massive cannon built into one section of the base. Olivia, can you disable that weapon permanently? Olivia studied the controls. Better than that. I can reconfigure it to self-destruct. The explosion will be contained within that section only. Do it, Kevin ordered. As Olivia worked, Kevin went to the communications console. George, can you establish contact with military command? George grinned. Already trying. The Zarans. We're jamming all human frequencies, but I've reversed it. We should be able to get through now. After a few tense moments, the view screen changed. The stern face of the Admiral who had ordered their surrender appeared, his expression changing from annoyance to shock as he recognized Kevin. Cadet Hayes? What is the meaning of this? Kevin stood straight, pride evident in his stance despite his exhaustion and injuries. Sir, USS Intrepid to command, Zarin base secured. We've captured Admiral Zack and disabled a planet-killer weapon that was targeting Earth colonies, requesting further instructions. The Admiral's mouth opened and closed several times before he found his voice. You secured the base? How? You were ordered to surrender. Kevin glanced at his team, who stood tall despite their fatigue. Sir, with respect, surrender wasn't an option we could live with. We saw an opportunity to do more. There was a long silence from the other end. Finally, the Admiral spoke again, his voice softer. Well done, Cadet. Well done indeed. Hold your position. Reinforcements are on the way. As the transmission ended, Kevin turned to his team. They were dirty, injured, and exhausted, but their eyes shone with pride and the knowledge that they had done something extraordinary. So, Olivia said with a tired smile, does this mean we passed the training mission? Laughter filled the command center of the captured Zarin base, human laughter, full of relief and triumph against impossible odds. Kevin Hayes looked at his crew, these cadets who had followed him on this impossible mission, and knew that whatever reprimand might come for disobeying orders, they had done the right thing. The human cadet who had been ordered to surrender had taken the enemy base instead, and in doing so had changed the course of the war.